July 4th, and a massive attack on St. Petersburg. 1,000 drones attacked the center of the city and the region. The whole city is in smoke. A missile threat has been declared in the Leningrad region. A state of emergency has been imposed there.
Come on! Come on! Come on, my brother! Hey, look at me! You gotta keep moving!
Massive chaos? Pulkovo, hundreds of flights delayed, crowds, planes aren't flying, people are panicking.
It's just a complete mess. In a few hours, it will be a full day that we've just been standing here.
I want to file a complaint. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, what is happening in our Russia, in our mighty country?
What? Is there no pension in our country? We extract this oil ourselves. How can there be no gasoline? So you're saying that our authorities are deceiving us? Kirill?
Flamingo missiles are attacking the homeland of the bunker dweller. First hit, another hit. The oil terminal has been blown up and is burning. St. Petersburg, a Repin painting. Enjoy. At the same time, missiles and drones attack 20 regions of Russia. Moscow, the Moscow region, and the occupied Crimea are burning. Friends, it's July 4th and there's a massive attack on Petersburg. 1,000 drones attacked Petersburg and the region.
For example, here it's just terrible.
The whole city is covered in smoke. The governor has declared a missile alert. Flamingo missiles are attacking the region and all of Russia. Hundreds of flights are delayed. Everything is at a standstill. Planes aren't flying.
Flight 603, Nezla Airlines. It's already been 20 hours and we still can't take off. We haven't slept, we haven't been fed, we haven't been given any water. The treatment is terrible.
The homeland of the bunker man, the first strike. Another hit. The oil terminal in St. Petersburg has been blown up and is burning. A painting by Repin. Enjoy. Governor Belgorod has declared an alert and recommended that all residents stay indoors due to the attack of the powerful smoke. And he confirmed the strike on the St. Petersburg Oil Terminal. Drones also crashed in Peterhof. The port of Vysotsk was also successfully hit. This is one of the key Russian ports in the eastern part of the Baltic Sea. Zelenskyy officially confirmed the strike on the oil terminal in St. Petersburg and the attack on Kronstadt. As of today, friends, half of the oil refining capacity of the Russian Federation has been destroyed. More than 42% of the capacities have been put out of operation according to ISU. Over the past year, Russia's losses have reached 13.5 billion. This is simply a massive blow. We will discuss all of this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Ruslan Kamdich, welcome.
Dasha, greetings to you. Dear viewers, greetings to you as well. All of this is by Putin's order. He wanted action, he demanded it, and he got it. You cited the numbers here very accurately. More than 500 drones attacked. As the ministry testifies, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has acknowledged such an attack. At the same time, they say that they shot down 389 drones. Be that as it may, the St. Petersburg Oil Terminal is on fire. It is also known and acknowledged The port of Vysotsk, they say drone debris fell there. In any case, the port of Vysotsk was also attacked. The city of St. Petersburg and the surrounding Leningrad region have now entered a zone that is, let us be perfectly frank about it, under the threat of a very serious and major strike, representing a significant and large-scale attack launched by the Ukrainian army. It would be an incomplete picture if we didn't mention this. In addition to St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region, from the evening at 8 p.m. until today, between 4 and 7 a.m., many other regions of the Russian Federation were also attacked. Belgorod, Bryansk, Vladimir, Kaluga, Kursk, Lipetsk, Novgorod. A whole array of targets was attacked. For example, in the Belgorod region, the Luch power station is on fire. According to the local residents of Belgorod themselves, there is currently absolutely no electricity, no reliable water supply, and they are finding themselves in an extremely serious, challenging, and difficult situation right now. What is encouraging is that residents of Chuvashia report that they are seeing drones flying overhead, Ukrainian drones over Chuvashia. This means that the barrier of the pre-Urals is already gradually being pushed back, and all this, it keeps moving forward. It would be an incomplete picture even if we didn't tell our viewers that, along with attacks on the mainland part of Russia, Crimea is not being overlooked by the Ukrainian army. 4 entire targets in Crimea have been attacked. And these targets, let's say substations have been attacked, as well as trunk lines have been attacked. The Nautorskaya power station, they are targeting those as well. Military factories in Jankoy, and of course the ferry terminal in Kerch. The ferry terminals. At this very moment, Ukraine is being especially active within this specific area, largely because those ferries are currently in constant use for their operations. They are using these to transport gasoline. There are no other routes. None. The open corridor from Rostov to Crimea is completely blocked. Earlier in our previous discussion, we mentioned how many bridges have been damaged or destroyed, so that route is also closed. Thus, a very interesting picture is emerging here. But just look at the numbers, dear viewers. Listen closely to this figure. In just 3 months of this year, according to Russian Federation experts, the damage inflicted solely on oil refining, Dasha Shultra did not give the exact figure, amounts to 42%. Almost 50% of Russia's oil refining has been affected by attacks and is either halted or destroyed. So the damage incurred is estimated at over 1 trillion rubles. These are enormous figures. Here they are, the sanctions. Europe and America aren't needed. Ukraine is the one imposing sanctions. In this way, Ukrainian military formations, drones, which are a separate branch of the armed forces, and all of them together, collectively, of course. I'm absolutely sure this is a turning point in this war because Russia has nothing to counter it with. That's how it is. Even we're getting some rather interesting news from the Russian Federation.
Friends, please like this video, write a few words in the comments to support the Special Operation Forces of Ukraine and Magyar, and let us know where you're watching from, what city, what country. I read all your messages and leave hearts, so please do this and subscribe to my channel for happiness. Officially, 3 fire sources have been recorded on the territory of the oil terminal on the Baltic Sea. There's a lot of smoke. This is one of the largest oil and petroleum product transshipment complexes in northwest Russia. It covers an area of 37 hectares, has 21 storage tanks for petroleum products, and its throughput capacity is 12.5 million tons per year. And now we've hit it. How painful a blow is this for Putin? Petersburg, Leningrad region, you are absolutely right. Today, at least 20 regions of the Russian Federation were attacked, including the occupied territories and Crimea. Leningrad region, Moscow region, and Petersburg.
Keep watching. Here's what the picture looks like. The European part is under attack, and there's a gasoline shortage in the Khabarovsk region. You'd think the Far East, supposedly everything's fine there, with Japan and China close by. You could just sleep peacefully and live calmly, but nothing of the sort. There are multi-kilometer traffic jams in the Khabarovsk region and Chita region, because everything that's processed there, starting from the Omsk oil refinery and beyond, is all being urgently sent to Moscow and the European part of the country. That's the whole problem. That's the whole problem. And it's not just about the traffic jams. Various Russian agencies provide some very interesting statistics. To illustrate this point, back in the year 2025, there was a widely circulated news article published with the striking title, "Russians are massively drinking themselves to death." This report highlighted a very serious public health crisis. It's exclusively the lack of these conditions, the absence, let's say, of military conscription, and now new problems with gasoline. This will add significantly more problems. And significantly more. As we look back at the year 2025, there was a significant and documented surge in the number of 83,000 individuals who were officially diagnosed with the condition all at once within a single reporting period. Alcohol dependence, this has never happened before. This has never happened before. Russian doctors claim that such a, let's say, spike, they have not observed it before. And most interestingly, they say that 2025 was like this. But in 2026, they expect the number of people in Russia dependent on drugs and alcohol to increase even more. The forecast is very grim. And so it would seem there is no gasoline here, no refinery, but all of this, these are social upheavals. This is the lack of amenities. And there was also a very interesting point. A thought was voiced within the walls of the academy, the Russian Academy of Sciences. Academician Anishchenko shared a very interesting idea. He voiced it. The fuel crisis. He says it actually has a positive effect on Muscovites. Why? Firstly, the situation with gasoline and its shortage helps make the air in Moscow cleaner. And what's most interesting is that Muscovites have become more active. Given the current situation, I would strongly suggest that the people of Moscow write a collective letter to express their sincere thanks to the Ukrainians for their resilience, to the military political leadership for making the air in Moscow cleaner and Muscovites more active. And in this way, well, you have to agree, dear Muscovites and Russians, that everything is being done for your benefit. And this is confirmed not by just anyone, not by some random person, but by a full academician of the Russian Academy of Sciences. And the name of this academician is Anishchenko. Most likely, he is originally from there, from Ukraine, and he is happy for his fellow countrymen that such happiness is being brought by Ukrainians to Moscow and St. Petersburg. Slava
Anatolievich, is this blow painful for Putin, that after all, it is the homeland of the bunker dictator? And to what extent do you think that our attacks on oil refineries and the resulting shortage, the collapse we've created, the Hunger Games in St. Petersburg, Moscow, and another 52 regions of the Russian Federation, how much does this hit Putin specifically, his wallet, his support, his ability to wage a war of conquest?
An interstate war, I think it's very serious for him. Two cities are particularly painful. The entities of Moscow and St. Petersburg. Moscow and St. Petersburg, this really has an impact. Let's say for him, it's a matter of concern because Moscow and St. Petersburg are symbols of the state, symbols of power. And when something happens somewhere out there in Voronezh, for example, in Bryansk, my God, or in some place like Chuvashia, there flamingos flew by and drones struck. Yeah, who cares? That's what he thought. When have Putin and the Russian authorities ever been troubled by some problems, or let's say the deaths of Russians? Never. But St. Petersburg and these two metropolises, Moscow and St. Petersburg, are very sensitive issues for them. This is essentially a broadcast of how people are witnessing it live. They're recording it, they're running away, they're seeing it happen. This is the collapse of Putin's power, the fall of his prestige. This is the complete ruin of his dominance, of that kind of alpha male image he projects. That powerful alpha male who supposedly controls everything and everyone. These are, let's say, his defeatist indicators. And of course, his mood is not improving. It keeps getting worse and worse because this damages his image and his ego. And frankly speaking, the budget as well. The budget also needs to be taken into account here.
Now let's talk about the FSB, Zhaba Gadyukinka, arrests and dismissals, and then we'll discuss Crimea, the Flamingo missiles, and strikes on all other key targets, including those in Crimea. A very interesting piece of news has come in. Putin has become scared, he's afraid, and the panic is starting. There's a viper inside the O0 cooperative. The O0 cooperative has started to crack. The FSB has detained Rotenberg's right-hand man, the head of the Russian Alliance Directorate, Konstantin Markov. So this is the second high-profile arrest in the last 2 weeks. An arrest at such a high level. What's going on? After all, this decision couldn't have been made without Putin himself. It turns out that they arrested a close acquaintance of Putin, the owner of the St. Petersburg ports and former gangster Ilya Traber. And him too. Only Putin himself could have approved this arrest. Whether the cases of Traber and Ruskim are connected is still unknown, although we can't rule it out. This was written by Vadim Denisenko, a well-known Ukrainian political strategist. What's going on there? What kind of snake pit is going on in the O0 cooperative?
And the FSB? I think that the closer the threat, the real danger gets, the higher the stakes become, and the more dangerous it is for those around him. After all, Rotenberg is not so much connected to the FSB as he is to Putin. He is Putin's personal asset. And moreover, both Boris and Arkady, these two brothers, these are people who, in principle, once took Putin under their wing back when he was a young man, a boy, at their judo school. And he expressed his deep gratitude by repaying them in kind. For example, consider the massive Kerch Bridge project that they successfully built, for which they were granted truly enormous financial resources. And in this specific context, it is impossible for us to not also remember the former governor of the Khabarovsk region, Sergei Furgal. After all, what was his tragedy? He was the owner of one of the factories producing metal structures for bridges. And then the brothers wanted to take over this factory for themselves, but he refused. And it was precisely as punishment. After all, the conflict with Furgal arose exactly because he didn't want to give in to the Rotenberg brothers. His asset, as a result, he lost both the factory and his position, and to this day, the sentence remains in force. They can't pass a sentence on him, and he languishes in prisons. This person, in this case, basically got what he wanted. And as the problem grows, as the time comes when they'll have to share the loot in order to, save Putin's own skin, meaning his family, his daughters, and then he'll start looking into the pockets of the Rotenbergs and the Kovalchuks as well. I think this is the beginning of a major scandal. A line will be drawn here. This is not just a crack. Soon there will be a rift in Putin's power. And then we will witness the moment when, quite openly, the FSB and Putin's close friends will end up on opposite sides of the barricades. And they will still, as we will witness, fight each other for their influence, for their post-Putin prospects, and simply to survive in the difficult situation that has developed in Russia today.
So, Crimea. For the second time in a week, the SBU struck fighter jets at the Saki airfield and hit the airfield's hangars. Vysotsk. Pilots from the unmanned systems forces struck the radar and about a dozen energy facilities in occupied Crimea. Almost all the thermal power plants have been blown up. Crimea is in blackout, there is no fuel, no gasoline, and Russians are fleeing the peninsula. At the Saki airfield, 7 hangars were hit for storing aircraft, as well as Su-30 and Su-24 frontline bombers, which were also blown up. According to preliminary information, at least this week, they have been destroyed or damaged. 7 aircraft. 7, Karl, this is simply shocking news, minus 7 aircraft. Also 2 hangars where Shaheds were stored at the Vysotsk airfield. Defense forces have attacked targets deep within enemy lines in occupied Crimea over the past 2 days. 4 bridges to Crimea have been blown up. The Denishny Bridge has been blown up. The Chonhar Bridge has been blown up. It's simply a special operation initiated by President Zelenskyy, a 30 or 40-day operation, and it is ongoing. Shlang Fomnik, the floor is yours.
Crimea is being cleared out. They really are turning Crimea into an island. I honestly think that individuals who possess any sense of logic or imagination, and especially people who actually think, should make every effort to evacuate that area immediately. Because the truth is that Crimea really is systematically being cleared out right now. Crimea, and you noted this point quite correctly, those specific hangars that were recently attacked, it is important to mention that there are now various detailed reports coming in from many different sources. These were not empty hangars, and inside these hangars there weren't just spare parts, but airplanes, including the commander's plane, which is significantly more valuable. And the facilities in Crimea are being neutralized. And the time will come, I am convinced, by this dynamic, by the trend of Ukraine's established approach toward Crimea. In this case, we are talking about Crimea. If this continues, the time will come when the Russians will simply realize that any further defense of Crimea is pointless. Do you remember, Dasha, how they left Kherson and crossed to the other side of the Dnipro? In exactly the same way, the time will come when, I think, if things continue in this dynamic, I believe they will leave Crimea and Crimea will return to its native harbor. To Ukraine, we are not just building such expectations here with you. Some kind of fantastic plans. We rely exclusively on factual material, and moreover, we confirm it with the Russian military ministries of defense themselves and witnesses who record, witnesses who see all of this happening right before their eyes.
The ferry crossing, the ferry terminal in Kerch, the Jankoy military airfield was attacked. Koi was also attacked, substations were blown up, blackout, no gasoline, Russians are fleeing. And here's the most interesting part, Flamingo missiles, Shlang Kamdich, are attacking. It was reported that there was not only a drone attack on Russia, but above all, Flamingo missiles were used in the attack. More than 19 regions of Russia, Crimea, Moscow region, St. Petersburg, Leningrad region. And the Flamingo missiles, which is very interesting, are mainly targeting factories. These factories produce components for Iskander missiles, which are constantly used to attack Ukraine. And now there is a powerful wave of Flamingo missile strikes targeting factories of Russia's military-industrial complex involved in the development of ballistic missiles for the Russian Federation. What do you think?
You know, Dasha, Flamingo is a whole different story in this concert. We have been waiting for this for such a long time. We have waited for a very long time for Ukraine to finally possess this powerful weapon, so that it would no longer have to constantly ask the Europeans or the Americans for assistance. It is truly something of its own domestic production. Of course, various European allies have definitely helped Ukraine significantly. And it is almost certain that some specialized engineering expertise came from there as well. But this is the creation of Ukrainians. And these Flamingo missiles are capable of causing damage. Dozens of times, if not hundreds of times more than drones. Every type of weapon has its own advantages. But when the Flamingo drone finally begins to roll off the production line, not just one by one, but in increasingly large and substantial quantities, and these precision strikes begin to systematically destroy critical military and industrial infrastructure, then these strikes will deeply and extensively disrupt the complex logistics that Russia has built over time to supply their front lines. The front line, I think that's exactly where things are heading. And once again, I want to say this is very good news. And the fact that these strikes are happening systematically, Flamingo strikes on Russian targets have started to occur quite frequently, which shows that this is not some one-off operation or just a few, let's say, experimental production models. Apparently, all of this has been launched, and this is both a weapon and news.
Alexander Akhmdinovich, ballistics. Ballistics aimed at Moscow is what Firepoint is announcing. Dennis Stilleman. Right now, we've noticed the following. Putin is constantly trying to evacuate from Moscow. He lives in Valdai. The entire road to Valdai is currently protected by anti-drone nets. There are 3 rings of air defense around Valdai. Moscow is now pulling all air defense systems from the front and from other regions, for example, from Voronezh. In Voronezh, people were crying, racists, because they have no air defense. Their facilities are being destroyed because Putin has moved all the air defense to Moscow. And Putin is deploying this air defense to residential buildings, apartment complexes in Moscow. That is, residential civilian objects are becoming military targets. And Putin wants them to strike at Muscovites, as I understand it, at their skyscrapers. And of course, there is not enough air defense. What can you say specifically about ballistics, about the defense of Moscow, and about this situation as a whole?
You know, Dasha, it is crucial to understand that these sophisticated factories produce Iskanders of various types, including short-range ballistic missiles, medium-range systems, and even massive intercontinental ones. Our viewers really need to hear this vital information, including the critical fact that these systems are primary carriers of strategic nuclear warheads. This is a very important component for Russia, and not just for Russia, but for any country. This is the cutting edge of equipment and technology for waging wars with major powers. And here it's very deliberate. There's one very interesting comment. I've heard that Ukraine is doing a favor for the United States and European countries by destroying precisely ballistic facilities, those producing long and medium range missiles. And here, this really does correspond to what has been stated. And in this regard, what can we say? Ukraine is working consistently and systematically. As for Russia's approach and behavior in Moscow, this isn't made up. A lot of Muscovites themselves record and show from their apartment windows, specifically various types of air defense weapons. They are installing them on buildings, on residential buildings. And when Ukraine is forced to attack in order to ensure, let's say, the unhindered flight of its drones and other means of attack on Russian military targets, they will have to attack these. And then they will start yelling, screaming, and writing that Ukraine is attacking civilian targets. Let's be fair about this. I don't need to be taught. I'm not susceptible to any kind of propaganda. I know how the Russians operate. 2 Chechen wars. They specifically targeted hospitals and maternity wards. I can name the towns. Specifically mosques and schools. And then they would say that some militants had taken up positions in those schools. There was no one there. They strike to cause pain, to kill children, women, nursing homes if there are any. We don't have them and never did. Homes, if it's these kinds of places, always need to be protected. If they strike a military base, they, let's say, will use weapons against it. More specifically, we are talking about these most vulnerable groups, regardless of their situation. Whether it's the Chechen Republic, Ukraine, if it's Poland, it will be Hungary too. In any case, Russia's behavior will be the same. And that's why, Dasha, the fact that they are building and installing these things in peaceful, let's say, neighborhoods of Moscow and other cities is not surprising at all. This is the line of conduct of the Russian authorities. This is a line that was probably established back during the early wars. This is exactly how they behave. Alexander.
Kamdievich, a military coup in the Kremlin, a mutiny in the Kremlin, a palace conspiracy against Putin, the elites, I don't know, private military companies belonging to these elites. Could they eliminate Putin, and under what circumstances could this happen as of today?
I don't think so. I don't see any force today that could eliminate Putin. The only force that could do this is the FSB. They are surely thinking about it. They would surely arrange it, but let's say Putin left a suicide note. Sorry, I was to blame. I was at fault for everything. I'm not blaming the FSB. I'm not blaming ABCDE. Patrushev is a good guy, and so on. Something like that. The FSB could arrange it in this style, but the FSB could pull it off. Well, the FSO is also a fairly serious intelligence agency. It was built by Putin based solely on personal loyalty to him. And this resonates here. They don't let him. Who is he afraid of? You know, for as many years as we've been working together, going on air, I've always said consistently, Putin is most afraid of the FSB in the world because they are the ones who could neutralize him. I mean, from the moment it became clear to them that they wouldn't conquer Ukraine, that in the end they will lose to Ukraine. Because with each passing day, things get worse. Every day the budget is lost, assets are lost, infrastructure is being destroyed. It's impossible to establish logistics. And that's why, yes, here, the GRU, the Ministry of Defense, and the General Staff won't go for this. The only thing is, do you remember, I think we talked about this, in Voronezh there appeared a man named Lunin, at least that's what he called himself, though his real last name was something else. After all, he really did. Though we understand it couldn't have been on such a scale or in such volumes. But even so, he did reflect certain sentiments among some segment of Russians there who are rotting away. He expressed these sentiments in the trenches. But these sentiments in the end can still ripen to such an extent that, dear viewers, I repeat, this is an important point. Raised in this trench poverty, having become some kind of lieutenant colonel, major or colonel, these people could be the very ones to organize a revolt. These people. But Ukraine needs to help them. There needs to be a breakthrough. And they need to start retreating somewhere, at least on some section of the front. After that, a chain reaction will follow, but to a different degree. they will all start abandoning their rifles. We remember World War I when they were throwing away their rifles. It happened with both the Germans and the Russians. And then they all marched on Petersburg. That's why I think, yes, Voronezh, Kursk, Lipetsk, Tula region, on the retreat, there will be looting, there will be rapes, but everyone will be moving there toward the capital. There was a time when plans were being made in Russia, realizing that this force would retreat, and they wanted to direct it toward the North Caucasus so that their hatred, bitterness, and defeat would supposedly be taken out there. So they could say, we defeated these wild mountaineers, terrorists, Muslims. It won't work. That page has already been turned as well, because that won't work either. So in this way, that's how I see the prospects from there. For now, I don't see any force that has matured. But we'll certainly see when the influential figures Kovalchuk and Rotenberg start initiating their strategic maneuvers, and when, let's say, General Gerasimov and the security chief Patrushev finally clash. Then we will truly see what specific power groups are being formed within the system. And based on that critical information, we'll be able to make our detailed analytical forecasts for the future.
Friends, meanwhile, Moscow is in a panic, searching for volunteers to fight the good drones and missiles through the vacancies website. Well, now you have to live with that. Friends, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. The channel is Dasha Shastlivaya. In the comments, write what you think about the work of Ukraine's armed forces, about the 40-day special operation that is still ongoing, about the strikes on St. Petersburg, Kronstadt, and military facilities. And in the comments, let us know where you're watching from, share your location. The well-known one and only President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Ruslan Makamdevich, thank you as always. See you next week.
Wishing you all the best, wishing you well, victory to you, and good luck to you, Dasha. You are doing great work all the way through.